Let's have another look at a policy I reckon had a major impact on the election result. It was a bad and irresponsible policy, but I reckon it bought Labor hundreds of thousands of votes, maybe millions. And that is the promise to reduce all HECS debt. Yeah, Labor will reduce all student loans by 20%, something they spruiked heavily in the campaign.
Under Dutton, your HECS debt, childcare, medicines, TAFE fees go up. He cuts, you pay.
Are you still deciding who to vote for? Hear me out. I'm voting Labor because they're committing to wiping 20% off everyone's student debt, which means we could all save literally thousands of dollars. But you got to vote to make that happen.
Yeah, there was no subtlety, was there? This was a pure election bribe to the young, and Labor knew it.
If you ask me what's the biggest and most important thing that we need to do in higher education, then it's cutting the cost of university degrees by cutting HECS debt by 20%. That's what we'll do if we win the next election. And I can tell you, in those knife-edge seats right around the country that will determine who sits in this room in a couple of weeks' time, there are tens of thousands of people in those seats that have got big HECS debts.
Maybe this even helps account for the Greens' poor showing, young voters thinking instead of Greens they'd go straight to Labor for a cut in their debt. Have a listen to this talkback caller.
I was stunned that the Liberals didn't recognise from the very early part of the campaign when Albanese announced this. Now, I spoke to 20 people last night, mostly under 35. They all voted Labor. Some of them, in fact, most of them are coalition voters normally. But they all voted Labor. They all want their 7. I worked out because, I know to ask people these questions. It was between 7 and 14,000 they were going to save, each of them.
Yep.
And their parents voted the same way because they wanted their kids to do better.
Now, sure, that's not a scientific sample, but the anecdotal evidence is strong. This was a winner for Labor, and it sets a terrible precedent, especially when you remember that it was Labor who brought the HECS system in, deciding this was the best way to fund further education. Now they use it as a honeypot to buy votes.
They will actually cut what we have said we will do as our first piece of legislation, benefiting 3 million Australians by cutting their HECS debt by an average of $5,500. They are literally saying to 3 million Australians, if you vote Liberal or National, we will increase your debt.
Yeah, it was reckless stuff, all right. What will they do next time? Promise to axe more student debt? Peter Dutton called it out during the campaign.
I don't think that young tradesperson or somebody who's just paid off their HECS debt should be responsible for my HECS debt. And that's the policy that has been long-standing.
He called it out, but like everything in the coalition campaign, we didn't hear enough about it. This policy is a bonus for many people, no doubt, those people who have had their debt lowered, but it's very unfair. For starters, the debt doesn't disappear. It just adds $16 billion of debt to the broader government tab. In other words, the people who repay it now are not the people who have benefited from the university study, but everyone else. So low-paid workers will pay more tax to pay the debt of students who go on to earn much more money than them in the long run. People who worked hard or took on a second job to pay off their student debt, well, now they'll pay higher taxes for longer to pay off other people's student debt. It's cynical politicking and it's reckless policy making. But I guess we're used to all of that by now.